Still ahead of the bulletin, Ghana to make $4.8 billion savings annually from oil for gold policy, according to Vice President Dr. Mamadou Baumia.
In business, Institute for Economic Affairs fears the markets could punish the economy if the government fails to secure IMF board approval by its March timeline.
And elsewhere on the international front, at least 22 people, including 3 monks, killed at a monastery in Myanmar's southern Shan state as local insurgent groups and the military-backed junta accuse each other of carrying out a massacre. We've got details of all these stories, plus many more coming up in the next 60 minutes. Remember, we're streaming live on Facebook. We're also live on your DSTV channel 279. You can join us with the views, comments, and suggestions on any of our top stories this hour. Feel free to send them coming in on Facebook or on Twitter. We promise to share them with the rest of the world. An
Accra High Court has dismissed a defamation suit filed by investigative journalist Aremeyaw Anas against Asin Central MP Kennedy Ejapon. Presiding Judge Eric Ban, while dismissing the case, awarded a 50,000 cost against the investigative journalist. My colleague Lord Idwasari has more.
The judge in the case that has been running since 2018 was stinging in his remarks as he delivered judgment against the investigative journalist, Aremeyaw Anas. He called the journalist a blackmailer, extortionist, and corrupt, and said his style isn't investigative journalism, but investigative terrorism. Anas filed a 25 million cedi defamation suit against the Member of Parliament after his investigative work, Who Watches the Watchman, that accused a journalist of extortion, blackmail, corruption, and other crimes, questioned the authenticity of his investigations. The judge seemed to agree when he told the court that, quote, "I hold that the plaintiff is a blackmailer who uses blackmail to extort money from his opponents and people he does not like. What the plaintiff is doing is not investigative journalism, but investigative terrorism." Kennedy Ejapon took on Anas after his investigative piece, number 12, brought down the Ghana football establishment and its then powerful president, Kwesi Nyantakyi. The former GFA president was in court for the ruling and beamed the smiles alongside Kennedy Ejapon, who did not hide his elation at the ruling.
Today, the victory is for the victims of Anas, the people, the good people of this country that Anas has destroyed. All those people who were sacked from their jobs, the people who have died through Anas' illegal investigation should be compensated. Compensation is not enough. He has to apologize to his victims. And today, I say to Ghanaians that we have to be bold to speak the truth in this country.
The court awarded the MP a 50,000 Ghana cedi cost, but he says that pales into insignificance compared to what he insists is the damage that Anas has caused several people.
What they have gone through, Anas' humiliation in this country, nobody, no citizen of this country should go through like that. I tell you today, the 50,000, I don't need it. I give it to him, but he should live with his conscience. And with this judgment, God is also going to give his judgment.
Lord Idwasari, TV3 News, Accra.
Very, very, very interesting developments in court today. We've been joined in studio by Martin Esiedu-Data, who's a news anchor and broadcast journalist here. Martin, you've been going through the statement. What have you been picking up?
Right, so on the back of the judgment in court today, Anas and Tiger IPI have also just released a statement in reaction to the judgment, and we just want our viewers to follow us as we've made extracts from that statement. And Anas's response starts from the fact that he has said, amongst other things, that the ruling is an unfortunate travesty of justice. And so that's an extract on your screen now. It says that the court established that Mr. Ejapon indeed defamed Anas, but in a bizarre twist concluded that the so-called documentary, who watches the watchman was an absolute justification, thereby absolving Mr. Ejapong of any liability. And that's, it goes on to say that we find the decision of the court an unfortunate travesty of justice and very inimical to the administration of justice and fairness. And in the conclusion, Anas and Tiger IPI said that this case traveled through the hands of 3 judges, with Justice Ba being the latest assigned to the case at the express instance of Kennedy Ejapong. I'm sure that for those who may be wondering the genesis of all of this, in 2018 thereabout, Anas sued Kennedy Ejapong after Anas aired the number 12 documentary which exposed some rot in the Ghana Football Association that led to the dismissal of Kwesi Nyantakyi. Now, we saw him in court with Kennedy Ejapong there. So Kennedy Ejapong also then decided to also give his side of the story, saying that who watches Anas or who keeps an eye on Anas? Anas cannot play God by himself. So he came out with his own documentary titled Who Watches the Watchman? And that is what Anas says that he was defamed in, and took it to court, asking the court to slap a 25 million Ghana cedi judgment on Kennedy Ejapong. But then things have turned the other way around, and now it is Anas that has to pay 50,000 Ghana cedis to Kennedy Ejapong, and then also...
Well, he has indicated that he's not interested in that amount
He doesn't need the money, and that Anas can keep it. But on the back of this, many people are already talking about it on social media and even in conventional media, that it raises a lot of questions about the justice
Anas
system.
and Tiger PI have not indicated that they're going to contest this decision, have they?
No, in their statement, they didn't mention that they're going to appeal it, but then they are saying that they are quite disappointed and that it is a travesty of justice.
Right, Martin. Let's stay a while longer on this developing story. Let's go live on our phone lines to speak to a private legal practitioner, Nick Bakpo Ado. Counsel, how does this mean for Anas and, to a large extent, investigative journalists and their work?
Well, good evening to your wonderful viewers and listeners. The name is Samoa. You are crucifying it, Samoa.
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. Lawyer Samoa.
Yes, I think this is a watershed judgment. Let me, of course, disclose I had also been involved in litigation all the way to the ECOWAS court in respect of the methodology that was adopted by Anas, because I represented some of the judges that were implicated by Anas in some of his investigations. And there's always been that raging debate as to whether or not the method of journalism that he was using actually was a fair representation of facts as they happened, or whether they were manufactured by him and then subsequently used as evidence against the individuals who were implicated. So there's always been that debate, whether it constituted entrapment or whether it constituted pure journalistic work as we, the ordinary people, would know it. And so this was a head-on, as they say, head-on collision. Because here was a defendant who was alleging that the work that Anas was doing constituted something other than journalism.
But Lawyer Samoa, in cases of national interest, our code of ethics, I believe, as journalists, allows us to use... Just hold on for me, please.
I'm coming. You and I have chosen to live under a constitutional dispensation. So what you and I do is subject to interpretation of law. As of today, the law is telling you that the method that he was using, and that judge, I think it was 65-page judgment, and I think it's everyone to take a stand and read the judgment.
Well, if you'd allow me to ask my question,
okay, sorry.
Indeed, like you rightly said, yes, as it stands today, the court has ruled, but of course, it's also subject to a challenge by the appeals court. My question to you, Lawyer Samoa, my question to you, sir, is that in cases of national interest, our code of ethics as journalists does allow the use of subterfuge. I mean, how was a journalist ever going to be able to prove that judges were corrupt if he didn't adopt the process of subterfuge? Indeed, there were other judges who did not receive the items. And so how else was the journalist going to prove that?
You see, I'm not going to battle you over an interpretation of what was said and what was done. See, right now, as you and I speak, a judge of a competent court of jurisdiction says that the methodology adopted, and let me quote what the judge said, maybe that would put it into proper context. This is what the judge said. I have considered it established that the plaintiff blackmails people he desires to destroy, probably his enemies, or the enemies of his friends or partners, or persons loaded with cash, whether legitimate or illegitimate, as a suspect in the gold scam by catching them on tape. The tape is then shown to them. The tape on those who pay up are shelved, but those who refuse or are not able to pay are held to the full glare of the public for reputational damage. I think you should take your time and read this particular that it is a ringing indictment on the methodology of Mr. Anas. It actually calls him a criminal simpliciter. And so it is a very damning verdict on his methodology. It actually describes the methodology as illegal. And so if your standards are what the law calls illegal work, then I think you should revise your note, because the law as it is today is that the methodology adopted by Mr. Anas is illegal.
My final question to you, and make it very brief for me. In Anas's response, he seems to make some very interesting points, that this case has traveled through 3 judges, and that the current judge who pronounced on this matter was called in at the instance of Mr. Kennedy Japan. How does that sound to you?
Well, first of all, Mr. Anas is a lawyer. He has been to court a number of times. When he wins in court, does he complain about the judges? And when he loses, does he complain about the judges? I think that what we should all focus on is the judgment and the context of the judgment. And I think you will do our viewers and listeners a lot of good if you could take time and serialize the entire judgment for everybody to read and understand. It contains a lot.
Right. I've got to say a big thank you to you, Lawyer Samwa. We appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Let's now cross over to Kumasi, where fire has gutted parts of the KJTIA market. My colleague Ibrahim Abubakar, he's our man on the beat. Ibrahim, if you can hear me, do you have any updates on this development?
Well, Aisha, for now, I can tell you that the fire service personnel have been able to bring the fire under control. Just some few minutes ago, most of the fire tenders left here. The situation was a big blur because they didn't know exactly what to do. And this evening, because there is no light here, and because of the thick smoke, it was difficult for them to enter inside and be able to douse the flame. But fortunately for now, we realized that the thick smoke has come down, and for that matter, we are able to see everything clearly. But still, traders are here. Most of them are bent on sleeping here and passing the night here because they don't know what will happen next. Even though, like I said, the fire has been brought under control, the fire service personnel are keeping some of their men here and the tenders here just to make sure that they've done the work fully in case anything sparks. Because just some few minutes ago, they bring the fire under control, and within 2-3 minutes, then we also see smoke coming out from one end. So it kept spreading from one shop to the other. So for now, it's a relief for them, even though most of them have already lost their investment. Some of them earlier even managed to enter inside. The fire and the police personnel were trying to push people out, but they were insisting that they go inside and be able to salvage some of their belongings. So, Aisha, the good news is that, as we say, the fire has been brought under control. Maybe from tomorrow, we will be able to assess the extent of damage and even maybe get the preliminary cause of the fire.
But have you been speaking to the traders? First of all, let me ask if there's been any casualties, and if you've been speaking to the traders and what they are saying, those that have lost their investment.
Well, for most of them, they are down. Some were even telling me that they brought in new stock just some few days ago, hoping that they will be able to sell and make some profit. But unfortunately, they've lost everything. With regards to casualty, we've not recorded any serious one, with the exception of some 1 or 2 traders who collapsed because they couldn't contain the pressure, seeing all their wares
Right.
burning or reducing to ashes. But the ambulance were here. They made sure that they gave all of them first aid and brought them back on their feet.
Right, Ibrahim, thank you very much. We'll definitely come back to you for more updates on this particular issue on Ghana Tonight, later at 10 p.m. Ibrahim Abubakar is our man in the Ashanti region, telling us about fire that has gutted Kejitia Market.
That's a very sad story, Aisha, coming in. Let's move on now to other stories. The Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, says the oil for gold policy has stabilized the exchange rate and would save the country some $4.8 billion annually. Now, speaking at a forum by the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company in Accra, he assured consumers of petroleum products that the price will decline further from the next pricing window of March 16.
The Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, defended government's decision to roll out the oil for gold policy.
Tomorrow we will see the decline in prices that we expect. I mean, this is remarkable. 2.5 months ago, you were at 23 cedis per liter. Today, you are at 12 cedis and falling. That is a good point. But let me point out that the most important aspect of the gold for oil policy is not just the reduction in fuel price, but the most important aspect is the savings in foreign exchange that the Bank of Ghana will make as a result of the lower demand for forex to import oil.
He gave an assurance that government will import more fuel under the policy and lauded the role of the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company boss.
The prices of fuel will go up and will come down. But what we expect to see under the gold for oil policy is more stability in the pricing and also savings in foreign exchange.
We're going to stay a while longer on this. Benjamin Boakye is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP. Thank you, Ben, for your time and good to have you on News 360. As a proponent of the gold for oil policy, in fact, we're told he's the one who came up with this whole policy. The Vice President seems quite exhilarated about the prospects. He seems to give a lot of credit to this policy, that the price drops we're seeing in crude oil at the pumps is attributable to the policy.
Thanks, Boakye. I think I'm in shock, really. I'm hearing what the Vice President was saying. I mean, unless you are looking at something else, but if you are really analyzing the industry and how the pricing mechanics works, you would note that it has nothing to do with gold for oil. We are seeing prices on the international market drop, to today about $73 per barrel of Brent, and even 66 for WTI. And indications are that it is even going to drop further. These have implication for petroleum products on the market, and that is what is forcing prices down, against the fact that the cedi has been stable for the past couple of weeks, if not months. So these are the fundamental drivers of the price that we are seeing. And I think it's a general attitude that even if we see price go up tomorrow, they'll have something to say. They say, oh, that one is international price. But when it's coming down, it's gold for oil. All right. And that
but in the same vein, Ben, if we criticize government for superintending over a terrible economy and the fact that inflation is rising, in the same vein, when prices are coming down, why don't we give them credit?
That is not what we do. We analyze policy based on the drivers, the factors that underpin, the occurrence on the market. I think you can blame them when you're a politician or a pedestrian who doesn't understand how the industry works. But if you understand the mechanics and what influences price, you have to analyze them based on those. But the point I was making substantially is that it is not oil, gold for oil that has brought down the price. And that is a fact. If you listen to any industry watcher beyond the government itself, who is just trying to communicate to the uninitiated that it is because of the gold for oil, the facts don't support that kind of proposition or that kind of analysis.
But if you listen to the vice president, he seems to suggest that, listen, it sounds like a miracle that, some few months ago, prices were hovering around $25, around 25 cedis, and it's now come down to as low as 14. It must take some superior economic management to be able to achieve this. Why don't you want to give it to him?
But those of us who are analyzing the market knows that few months ago, oil price on the international market was around $120 per barrel. It is halved. All right. Are we seeing half price on our market? All right. A few months ago, the cedi was almost hitting 15 to the dollar. Is that what we have today? So the circumstances have changed. And always when you're doing analysis, and it's not just politics, you have to look at the facts on the issue and then be able to put the issues as they are. But even let's look at the gold for oil itself, right, and what it has done. In the past 3 months, they have brought in 3 cargoes, 40 metric tons, and then another 40, and then 35 metric tons. So altogether, you're not even doing 120 metric tons from oil, gold for oil. The consumption in Ghana is about 350 metric tons a month. So in 3 months, Ghana would have consumed about 1,000 plus of products, right? 1,050 metric tons in Ghana. So if you have done less than 120 metric tons, that's less than 12% of the market. You cannot assume that that's what is doing a miracle. You get my point? So let's think about, what is really driving the issue and communicate that appropriately. But You see, what Boss has been doing today, it's a lot of risk that they are taking on. Boss has imported products, and the products are in the market today, but prices have dropped significantly since then. So the BDCs are now going to buy the product cheaper than what Boss bought theirs. So they have capacity to undercut what Boss has brought. And by doing so,
it's going to create losses for governments.
They're going to take on the losses.
Right. And Ben, I'm afraid we've got to leave it here. I do really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for, attending upon us. Thanks, Benjamin Boakye, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy.
To some more stories tonight, Health Minister Kweku Agyeman has been handed one of the highest national honors by President Akufo-Addo despite the many controversies that have characterized his management of the health sector. There were almost 20,000 award winners at the 2023 National Honors Awards, but his name stood out. My colleague Judith Awotritando has more.
He was one of the many officials on the COVID-19 task force who were honored by President Akufo-Addo for their efforts in Ghana's fight against COVID-19. But there'll be many people asking questions about that award given. The minister had to give a public apology after he was criticized for purchasing some 300,000 overpriced Russian Sputnik V vaccines from a middleman from the United Arab Emirates without cabinet or parliamentary approval.
Those were not normal times, and I was seriously in the situation that couldn't make me think properly, the way you think that now I will actually address myself to the situation.
The Auditor General's report also cited the Ministry of Health for failing to take delivery of some COVID-19 jabs it paid for that cost the state some $81 million. The minister was one of the many government officials ignorant of the controversial deal that gave the COVID-19 testing of passengers traveling into the country to Frontiers Ghana Limited. The audit report would also cite the Health Ministry for rolling out some 10 million cedis insurance premiums to cover some 10,000 frontline workers and allied professionals without a life insurance document. But that's not all. The minister at the height of the COVID-19 infections, when people in authority and celebrities were using their status to fight the stigma with contracting the virus, publicly denied contracting and getting admitted. It took the president during one of his national addresses to announce it. The minister's issues, however, are not limited to COVID-19 alone. Just days ago, he came under heavy criticism over the almost 6-month-long shortage of childhood vaccines.
The recent shortage in vaccines for measles, as regrettably as it is symptomatic of the steady global decline in measles vaccination since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, at least the public backlash paid off as it led to the procurement of a limited number of vaccines. Even so, the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association says the current stock would only last a couple of weeks. But in all this, the reaction from the president, especially at the height of the COVID-19 vaccine procurement scandal, gives insight into why the health minister is certified with one of the nation's highest honors.
Minister of Health,
Judith Awachitando, TV3 News, Accra.
I'll take you to Parliament now, where the Roads Minister has dared Parliament to set up a committee to investigate assertions by President Akufo-Addo that his government had constructed more roads than any other government in the country's history. The Sector Minister, Kwesi Amakwata, was contributing to the State of the Nation debate ongoing in Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, this statement made by His Excellency the President was factual, the statement was credible, the statement was dependable, the statement was incontestable, the statement was undisputed, the statement was introvertible, and above all, Mr. Speaker, the statement is verifiable by anybody who cares. Mr. Speaker, that statement on the road sector made by His Excellency the President is backed by empirical data which is available at Ministry of Roads and Highways. And Mr. Speaker, I challenge any member of this House, I challenge any member of this country, and Mr. Speaker, I can go further to request that if anybody is in doubt, this House can set up an independent bipartisan committee to investigate at my ministry the facts of the data, and that the President, under his leadership, has done more work in the road sector. Whichever activity is considered as aforementioned, the work of the President and his government outshines any other government, right from independence.
That he believes many people in the country doubt the data is provided. So he's offering that you direct that the House set up a bipartisan commission to investigate or verify the claim he's made. Would I plead with you now to direct that we set up the committee, since he knows that we doubt this information, so that we set up the committee to investigate this?
Well, leader, let's give it a thought.
The marketing director for beauty, well-being and personal care for Unilever, Nana Ya Owusu Ansa, is urging women to not only make their voices heard, but make their impact felt. Geisha, one of Ghana's leading soap brands, has been at the forefront in championing the cause of women over the years.
The Geisha brand believes in the capabilities of women in shaping their children and keeping their homes. It has an unwavering resolve that mothers are essential to the development of functioning societies and identifies women as a catalyst pushing tomorrow's tech professionals.
As a company, Unilever, we believe that brands with purpose grow and organizations with purpose last. Geisha Soap has lasted for over 4 decades, and that's why we want to connect with our women. Our purpose is at the heart of everything we do, and our purpose centers around teaching values of strength and resilience for people and women to achieve their goals. This year, our decision to partner with Charterhouse in the National Women's Summit was an easy one. The global theme, which is Embrace Equity, translates into our local theme, which was Digital, Innovation and Technology for Gender Equity.
At the 5th anniversary of the Ghana Women's Summit and Expo, Marketing Director for Beauty, Wellbeing and Personal Care for Unilever Ghana and Francophone Africa, Nanaya Owusu-Ansah urged women to focus on digital skill improvement.
The world of work is changing, and we need to be able to adapt to that change as well. And so I would encourage all of us to take this up so that it's not just about making our voices heard, but we will continue to make our impact felt.
A reminder, you're still watching News 360, our major news bulletin for the day. Still ahead in the bulletin, we've got sports, we've got entertainment, but coming up now is Stella Michelle with the very latest in business news.
It's now time for business, and Della Michelle is here. Della, you have something on the IMF bailout conversation and the deadline.
Yes.
What is it about, really?
So now we know that the president did make, give some assurance that we're going to receive the bailout sooner than we expected. But there's been conversations around it. We've heard from Joe Jackson. Today we're going to hear from the IEA.
Right, let's hear it.
And the Director of Research at the Institute for Economic Affairs, IEA, says the March timeline set by President Akufo-Addo to secure an IMF Executive Board approval is tight and could land the economy into further trouble. Dr. Boakye said the market could punish the economy if the high investor expectations are not met. He was reacting to President Akufo-Addo's State of the Nation address a while ago.
Look, you could have done these things, these adjustments, adjust this, do that, I mean yourself. There's something called policy credibility that you may not be able to, by what you are doing. You need an external anchor, the IMF, which the whole world is looking up to. You see, that's why governments eventually say, well, let's go to the IMF, because everybody believes the IMF. The stability that we are experiencing and all that, it's all due to that expectation that, oh, we will get a program, IMF. Are you getting me? Now, if we don't get the IMF program, I cannot predict, because things will, the credit rating agencies, the international, the bondholders and all that, I don't know what really will happen. I don't know, because it's going to be everything will unravel.
So those are the stands of the Executive Director for IEA. But let's look at bondholders, as the coalition of individual bondholders groups has welcomed the commencement of payments of matured bonds and coupons to its members. The bondholders expected payment on 6th and the 13th of February as pledged by government, but were not honored. The Ministry of Finance, however, said the payment process had begun in February. Bondholders have now confirmed receipt of payments. In a joint press statement issued by the Ghana Individual Bondholders Forum and the Individual Bondholders Association of Ghana, the holders said they were happy with the payment but stated their displeasure for the delays. The joint statement added that the failure of the Finance Ministry to be definite about a payment schedule or a notification date for outstanding payments does not augur well for the rebuilding of confidence in the financial market. They urged the government to make the outstanding payments as scheduled. Meanwhile, lead researcher at GCB Capital, Courage Boti, says government will have to do a lot more to engender investor confidence following the resumption of the payments on outstanding coupons and principals on bonds that matured on February 6th. The Finance Ministry yesterday assured investors that it had begun the process to settle payments after after bondholder groups gave government a 2-day ultimatum to make good its promise. Speaking to 3 Business, Mr. Buti said although the payments have begun, government needs to secure the confidence of investors.
So this first flow is actually a good indication, and I think there are a number of others that may have matured along the process, and so we expect that their payment to be cleared, and then it can come back current on some of these bond payments. In fact, for most institutions, the banks and those under regulation, really being current on some of these payments, even including the new bonds, will determine what treatment will be given to those assets, those bonds held by these institutions, especially the financial institutions and all of that. So for government to restore confidence in that economy, they need to be current on those coupon payments without issues. And so this first one is actually a very important step, and we'll look forward to the rest, to safeguarding confidence back in the economy again.
Welcome to the Entertainment News segment. My name is Anita Ekia Ekufo, and renowned Ghanaian actor and filmmaker Beku Segu has appealed to the government to create an enabling environment to attract private investment in the film industry. And according to the Back Home from Justice producer, the government has no business in funding the film sector. Rather, they should put in place structures for the industry to thrive.
And then when you talk about government intervention, I would not expect government to directly put its money in any film. What government should do is to create the environment, tax relaxation, the availability of infrastructure, and all that. That is what happens everywhere. For instance, if you bring in equipment, your equipment are not taxed. Once you indicate that after they are being brought in for production, and after the production they'll be returned to source, they are not taxed. I don't want government to directly put money in my film, but what I want government to do is to, as it does in all other areas, to create the environment to enable me to take advantage of it to make a good film.
To some more stories, Ghanaian traditional musician King Ayusoba is hopeful of winning a Grammy for Ghana someday. He was speaking on 3FM Sunrise Morning Show with Johnny Hughes.
Would you want to win the Grammys for Ghana? Rocky Dawoodi has tried 2 times. He didn't get it.
I think that Allah got it. Because the way I see Lucky Gawin try, you see that Lucky Gawin said that based in Ghana, and in songs it's not really popular in Ghana. Only one song in Ghana.
Yes, right.
So sometimes before you win the Grammy, they will ask about this man in hometown.
The local, okay.
The local is a champion, is what? And I'm already win award plenty. You see, Lucky when you don't win Artist of the Year in Ghana. So if you don't win Artist of your country and you don't tour plenty, you don't go to place. Grammar you cannot get. If you get, let you get lucky. That bring Lucky when you cannot win in Ghana. But he try, but he should come Ghana.
He should come home
to work hard.
But
to
can we trust you to bring it home for us?
Let's see.
Let's see.
Yeah.
It is definitely possible. But away from that, and still celebrating Ghana Month, we put a spotlight on Tuwo Zafi, also known as TZ, a popular local dish commonly consumed, especially in the northern parts of Ghana. Tuwo Zafi, a highly nutritious Ghanaian delicacy, consists of 3 separate dishes which are combined for the final dish. That is the meat stew, the ayoyo sauce, and the Tuwo Zafi itself. TZ is made by cooking a combination of maize or millet flour and water. The word tuwo means stirring or paddling, while the word zafi means hot. Tuwo Zafi is not only popular in Ghana, but also across some other parts of West Africa. It is normally eaten with any soup of your choice, but the most common soup associated with TZ is ayoyo or dry okra, which is also known as busheshe kebewa. Well, Aisha tells me it's Kubiwa. Okay, I butchered that one. But my name is Anita Ekuya Ekufu, and that'll be all for entertainment. Have a good evening.
It's now time for some international news.
At least 22 people, including 3 monks, were killed at a monastery in Myanmar's southern Shan state on Saturday as local insurgent groups and the military-backed junta accused each other of carrying out a massacre. Myanmar has been mired in political violence since military leader Min Aung Hlaing seized power in a 2021 coup that upturned any hope. The Southeast Asian nation of 55 million people will become a functioning democracy. The coup was followed by a brutal military crackdown against pro-democracy protesters that saw civilians shot in the streets, abducted in nighttime raids, and allegedly tortured in detention. Since the coup, at least 2,900 people in Myanmar have been killed by junta troops and over 17,500 arrested, the majority of whom are still in detention according to advocacy group Assistance Association for Political Prisoners. A Texas judge is hearing arguments about whether a commonly used abortion pill should be sold in the U.S. in a ruling that could curtail access to the drug nationwide. The pill, mifepristone, can be taken at home and is used in more than half of U.S. pregnancy terminations. A lawsuit filed by an anti-abortion group in Texas argues that the drug safety was never properly studied. The drug has been approved for use for over 20 years. The case, which will be decided by Judge Matthew Kaczmarek, an appointee of former President Donald Trump, follows the U.S. Supreme Court's historic overruling last year of a constitutional right to abortion.
Well, I guess that's how we conclude News 360.
Definitely, but don't forget to look out for the assignment tonight at 9 p.m. Ashaiman Under Siege. That's it for tonight. You can find more news on 3news.com. My name is Aisha Yakubu Halim.
I am Pakwis Yasari. Thanks for watching.